Sharon is like my soulmate. Sometimes I love her, sometimes I don't love her, sometimes I'm angry with her, sometimes I'm crazy about her, sometimes I'm very jealous of her, sometimes I want to kill her.
For more than 50 years, Ozzy Osbourne was a living legend, defiant, wild, and unstoppable, even as his body betrayed him. But just weeks before his death at 76, Ozzy revealed a final, private wish to Sharon that would define his last days. This isn't just a rock star's farewell. It's the story of a marriage, a legacy, and a final act that left millions in tears. What did the Prince of Darkness ask for before the end? And how did Sharon make it happen? You're about to find out. The shadow over Birmingham. The city of Birmingham had always worn its history with pride, factories, football, and the birthplace of heavy metal. In the summer of 2025, though, Birmingham felt different. Streets were lined with murals, concert flyers, and flowers. Fans camped outside familiar landmarks, some singing Sabbath riffs under their breath, others quietly reflecting on the life of the city's most famous son. For them, and for Ozzy Osbourne, time was running out. Inside a quiet house on the outskirts of the city, Ozzy Osbourne, the man millions had known as the Prince of Darkness, was facing something far more daunting than any stage or scandal. Parkinson's disease, diagnosed decades before, had finally begun to take everything. His walk became a shuffle, his hands shook, and the strength that once electrified stadiums seemed to fade by the day. Yet, family and close friends noticed that something in Ozzy had changed. He grew quieter, his humor more reflective, his eyes focused not on the world outside, but on memories and, increasingly, on Sharon. For Ozzy, the past was always close. The wild nights in LA, the chaos of Black Sabbath tours, the infamous moments that made him a tabloid fixture. These stories now circled back, not with pride, but as a kind of inventory. In his final weeks, Ozzy didn't want to talk about harmful substances or awards. He talked about love, about family, about the city that made him, and about a longing to end things on his own terms. Sharon Osbourne, ever the protector, became more vigilant than ever. She coordinated doctors' visits, organized family schedules, and quietly shielded Ozzy from the demands of fans and press. She knew, perhaps more than anyone, how much Ozzy hated hospitals and how deeply he resented the idea of dying as a patient, rather than a performer. Sharon watched her husband wrestle with physical decline, his spirit still raging even as his body failed him. The Osbourne house became a place of gathering. Kelly, Jack, Amy, Jessica, and Louie all made their way home, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days, never knowing when a goodbye might have to be the last. Ozzy's sense of time began to shift. He spoke often about unfinished business, about wanting to go out right. Sharon recognized the old stubbornness in his voice. It was the same force that kept him alive through overdoses, public meltdowns, and scandals that would have destroyed lesser men. This was not just the story of a dying rocker. It was the story of a man who, against all odds, wanted to write the ending to his own life. As July approached, a new rumor started to spread among Birmingham's music circles. Something special was coming. City officials planned murals, commemorative benches, and even a giant tribute concert. Fans wondered if Ozzy would appear. Some speculated he was too sick to even stand, let alone sing. Others clung to hope. Ozzy had defied expectations before. In quiet moments, Sharon watched Ozzy sit by the window, staring out at the city he once left behind. She knew something few others did. Ozzy was holding on to a final wish, a request only she could make happen. Outside, the world began to prepare for a goodbye. Inside, a family waited for the moment Ozzy would reveal what mattered most. Would he ask for one last song? A reunion with old friends? Sharon braced herself, knowing that whatever it was, she would not let him down. A love story stronger than metal. Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne's story is legendary, not just because of fame, fortune, or chaos, but because it was forged in fire and proved indestructible. In an industry where marriages crumble under the weight of ego and excess, theirs endured every test the world could throw. Their first encounter, decades ago, wasn't a love at first sight fairy tale. Sharon was the strong-willed daughter of Don Arden, Black Sabbath's hard-nosed manager, and Ozzy was the unpredictable frontman, spiraling between creative brilliance and addiction. The odds were stacked against them from the start. But Sharon saw something others missed: a wounded man who needed saving, and a genius worth protecting at all costs. Through the wildest years of rock and roll, Sharon became more than a wife. She was the force behind Ozzy's survival. When substances threatened to destroy him, she staged interventions and made the tough calls that few partners could endure. Through it all, she ran his career, raised their children, and managed the circus of Osbourne family life, which would later become a cultural phenomenon thanks to MTV. Yet, theirs was not an idyllic story. Their relationship survived affairs, relapses, and cancer. Sharon's own battle with colon cancer in the early 2000s nearly broke the family. Ozzy's outbursts, sometimes violent, sometimes tragic, were matched only by Sharon's capacity to forgive and to fight for the man she loved. Even the world's eyes on them during the Osbournes' reality series could not fracture the bond they built in private. Every argument, every reconciliation, every laugh, and every heartbreak unfolded on the stage of their home. In those last weeks, all that history, all those hard-won victories and wounds became the foundation for a different kind of battle. Ozzy was not afraid of death, he told Sharon. What he feared was fading away quietly, his story unfinished, his life reduced to hospital visits and headlines about suffering. More than ever, Ozzy wanted to be remembered for his strength, his music, and his love for his family, not for the disease that had taken so much. It was Sharon, as always, who understood first what needed to be done. She started making calls. She coordinated with doctors, city officials, old bandmates, and even record executives. Everything would have to happen fast. Ozzy's health was declining rapidly, and any plan could be undone by a single night's downturn. She was no stranger to logistics, but this time, the stakes were different. This wasn't about an album launch or a reality show. This was about giving Ozzy control over his ending. Their children rallied, putting aside their own grief and uncertainty to support both parents. For Kelly and Jack, who had grown up in the chaos of the Osbourne home, this was a chance to give something back to the parents who had, for all their flaws, built a world full of music and love. Family, friends, and confidants stepped in. Some handled logistics, others simply kept Ozzy company, distracting him with stories from the road, jokes, and memories. Behind it all, Sharon quietly carried the burden of knowing that everything rested on her shoulders. There would be no public spectacle unless Ozzy wanted it. There would be no forced reunions or exploitative headlines. Sharon's promise was simple. Whatever Ozzy wanted in his final days, he would get. And if that meant rewriting the script one more time, so be it. As Birmingham buzzed with anticipation, Sharon moved mountains behind the scenes. Every detail was handled, every contingency considered. She didn't let Ozzy see the stress. Her mission was to shield him, to make his final wish not just possible, but perfect. For the man who once sang about madness, darkness, and chaos, the most important thing in the world was now peace, a peace only Sharon could provide. The legacy and the city. As Birmingham braced itself for an emotional farewell, the heart of the city seemed to pulse with both anticipation and sadness. Local newspapers filled their front pages with photos of a young Ozzy, gritty and wide-eyed, posing with his Black Sabbath bandmates in the industrial haze of Aston. Music venues strung banners across brick alleys, and shop windows played a constant loop of Sabbath riffs and solo anthems. Even those who had never met Ozzy in person spoke about him as if he were family, a neighbor who had stumbled, soared, and somehow always came back home. For years, Ozzy Osbourne had been more than a rock icon. He was Birmingham's complicated son, the living proof that you could rise from the factory streets to change the world. It wasn't just about music. It was about hope, grit, and surviving against the odds. As word of his decline spread, the city moved as one. From the mayor's office to the smallest pubs, everyone joined the effort to create a celebration worthy of a legend. The Summer of Sabbath Festival grew into something colossal. Parks filled with fans old and young, sharing stories and painting faces with the iconic bat wings. Giant murals sprang up overnight, stretching across the football stadium's outer wall, showing Ozzy with his arms outstretched over Birmingham as if inviting everyone to one last embrace. Yet, behind all the public events and the feverish planning, there was an undercurrent of something deeper, something even the most devoted fans could sense but never quite name. As tributes rolled in from around the globe, as celebrities and old friends posted their memories and regrets, a question lingered on every radio station and in every pub. Would there be one final show, one last moment, when the Prince of Darkness would return to the stage that made him who he was? And if so, what would it mean for the city, for the family, and for Ozzy himself? Sharon moved through Birmingham these days like someone carrying precious cargo. She met with local officials, quietly oversaw production details, and always, behind the scenes, kept her focus on Ozzy's wish. For Sharon, the public side of the celebration was just the beginning. Her true mission was personal, driven by the promise she'd made to Ozzy in their most private conversations. As the date of the concert approached, the tension grew almost unbearable. Tickets disappeared in minutes. Local radio hosts urged fans to treat the event with reverence, and families arranged cross-country pilgrimages. This wasn't just nostalgia. It was an act of collective gratitude, a city giving back to the man who had, for so long, embodied its voice and spirit. In the final days before the concert, tributes from the music world reached a fever pitch. Elton John, Metallica, even Paul McCartney sent messages of respect and love. Social media exploded with photos, videos, and raw emotion. People remembered not just the music, but the moments when a lyric or a melody had changed their lives. For Ozzy, these tributes mattered more than most fans would ever know. In private, Sharon shared them with him one by one, reading aloud the words of friends, rivals, and total strangers who had all, in some way, been touched by his presence. What exactly was Sharon planning? Could this homecoming truly fulfill the promise Ozzy had asked her to keep? And if it did, how would the world react when they finally saw the secret she had been guarding so carefully? The night Birmingham stood still. When the evening finally arrived, Birmingham seemed to vibrate with an electricity rarely felt in any city. The streets leading to Villa Park overflowed with a river of fans dressed in vintage Sabbath tees, holding handmade banners and old vinyl albums, hoping for one more signature, one more memory. The city's heartbeat aligned with the crowd's anticipation as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light on the stadium that would host this unprecedented farewell. Inside Villa Park, technicians raced to finalize the massive stage. Sound checks echoed across the empty seats, and production crews rehearsed the cues for a show destined to become legend. Sharon was everywhere, supervising backstage arrangements, making sure every detail aligned with Ozzy's vision, and ensuring that each of their children found a quiet moment alone with their father before the doors opened. The family huddled together in the dressing room, sometimes silent, sometimes sharing laughter through tears. In those hours, they weren't celebrities or reality stars. They were just a family bracing for goodbye. As the stadium filled to capacity, the mood was unlike any typical concert. There was celebration, yes, but it was tempered by a solemnity, a recognition that this would be the last time their hero would take the stage. When the lights finally dimmed and the opening chords of "Mama, I'm Coming Home" rang out, a hush fell over the crowd. The curtain rose to reveal Ozzy, fragile, regal, and utterly magnetic, seated in his black throne at center stage. For a moment, time itself seemed to freeze. Cameras flashed, fans reached for each other's hands, and Sharon stood just out of sight, her promise now fulfilled. Every note Ozzy sang seemed to carry the weight of his entire journey. His voice, though aged, cut through the stadium with a raw honesty that moved even the hardest cynics to tears. When he launched into "Crazy Train," the energy in the arena surged as if a current passed through every person present. Old bandmates stepped onto the stage one by one, uniting for a set that transcended nostalgia and became a true celebration of life, music, and legacy. Throughout the night, screens above the stage flashed images from Ozzy's life, black and white photos of the young dreamer from Aston, shots of Black Sabbath's earliest gigs, chaotic family scenes from the MTV era, and snapshots of quiet, everyday happiness. The songs weren't just music. They became milestones in the shared memory of a generation. The fans sang along, not just with their voices, but with their hearts, each lyric connecting them to their own past and to the man who had given them a soundtrack for survival. Fireworks lit up the sky as the final notes faded, and the crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to last forever. Ozzy, tears streaming down his face, offered a simple thank you, his eyes fixed on Sharon. There was nothing more to say. The performance was his final wish made real, a farewell that captured every joy and every pain, every rise and every fall. As the crowd slowly filed out into the warm Birmingham night, the feeling was unmistakable. They had witnessed not just the end of a career, but the closing of a story that had touched millions. Yet, for Sharon and the family, the most important moments were still to come. Quiet, unpublicized, and filled with the kind of love that survives every curtain call. But even as the world said goodbye, a new kind of tribute was about to begin, one that would show just how far Ozzy Osbourne's impact would reach, even after the music had stopped. Echoes around the world. The morning after Ozzy Osbourne's final performance, headlines across continents declared it a night for the ages. News outlets, music blogs, and fan forums pulsed with stories and reactions as clips from the Villa Park concert flooded social media. People who had never even set foot in Birmingham found themselves swept up in the collective awe, sharing memories, tributes, and tears with strangers who felt like family for just one moment in time. It was more than a trending hashtag or viral video. It was a global acknowledgement of how deeply one life could resonate across generations and cultures. The wave of tributes that had started weeks before his passing now surged. Fellow musicians posted photos and memories, each story adding another layer to the portrait of a complicated but beloved man. Younger artists credited him with inspiring them to take risks, to be authentic, and to chase the raw power of music, no matter the odds. Even outside the world of rock, Ozzy's name echoed. Comedians, actors, athletes, and ordinary fans spoke of how his resilience and humor shaped the way they approached life's struggles. In classrooms, on job sites, and at kitchen tables, people revisited the music that had gotten them through heartbreak, adolescence, or loss. The impact of Ozzy's farewell was unmistakable. It had brought together millions, if only for a fleeting moment, in gratitude and admiration. For Sharon and the Osbourne family, those days were bittersweet. Their home, once a hub of chaotic energy and laughter, now felt impossibly quiet. Yet, it was also filled with flowers, letters and tokens from around the world, messages of love and thanks. Each one a reminder that Ozzy's legacy would not fade with the passing of days. Sharon's decision to honor Ozzy's final wish became the subject of interviews and profiles, with journalists calling it an act of devotion rarely seen in an industry built on spectacle and fleeting fame. The world watched as Sharon spoke publicly for the first time after his passing. Her voice steady as she described the man behind the myth, a devoted father, a fiercely loyal husband, a dreamer who never stopped loving his family or his fans. Amid the grief, something extraordinary happened. Fans began organizing their own tributes. Across Europe and the Americas, flash mobs broke out in parks and subway stations with impromptu renditions of Crazy Train. Local bands hosted charity concerts in his name, raising funds for Parkinson's research and music education, causes that Ozzy and Sharon had supported for years. Churches rang bells, stadiums played his music before matches, and city landmarks lit up in purple and black, the colors most closely associated with the Prince of Darkness himself. Birmingham, meanwhile, cemented its place as the heart of Ozzy's story. The mural at Villa Park became a shrine, covered in candles, notes, and guitar picks. Tourists traveled from as far as South America and Asia to lay flowers or simply stand quietly, paying their respects in the place where it all began. The City Council announced a permanent exhibition dedicated to Black Sabbath and Ozzy Osbourne, promising that generations yet unborn would have a chance to discover the music and spirit of a man who gave everything to his art. The world's outpouring of love revealed the truth of Ozzy's final wish. More than fame, more than even one last performance, what mattered most to him was connection to his city, his family, and the millions of people whose lives he touched with every note and every misstep. And in the days that followed, it became clear that legacy isn't measured in record sales or headlines, but in the enduring bond between an artist and the souls he helps shape. Yet even as fans and family tried to process a world without Ozzy Osbourne, another chapter was quietly unfolding, one that would see his spirit live on in ways no one could have predicted. Ozzy Osbourne's final wish was simple but profound: to come home, share one last moment with those he loved, and leave this world with music echoing in the night. With Sharon by his side and millions watching, he found peace on his own terms. His legacy is more than his legendary voice or wild stories. It's the power to bring people together, to inspire, and to remind us that even the darkest journeys can end in light. If Ozzy's story moved you, share your favorite memory or song in the comments below. Subscribe for more stories that honor legends. And remember, music never dies. It only waits for someone new to turn it up. Thank you for watching.